Top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this upcoming weekend on the undercard of Lawrence Okolie versus David Light. That mandatory title defense for the reigning WBO cruiserweight champion, unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's featherweight division.
Artingstall
Will be returning to action, attempting to advance to a professional record of 3-0. She will be opposite the ring, her countrywoman, Lindsey Buczynskyj.
34 years old, fighting out of the orthodox stance.
Whereas Karis, she's a southpaw, a spiteful one, a capable one, based on what I've seen.
Very good physical dimensions for the women's featherweight division. A fighter that could one day see herself campaigning as a super featherweight, maybe even a lightweight, maybe.
We are talking several fights and several years from now. I want to say Karis Artingstall, her base style.
Standout amateur.
Some amateurs need a little bit more time to transition from an amateur style to a pro style. Karis Artingstall is not one among them.
Not based on what I've seen. She's there already.
I want to say that in spite of Karis' significant other, Lauren Price, being the more decorated amateur boxer of the two, Karis
actually has the better base style for the pro ranks.
She goes out there with bad intentions, looking to do damage, looking to hurt the other girl. She's going to look to hurt Lindsey Buczynskyj this weekend. Lindsey, who sports a professional record of 4 wins with 1 loss, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet, having never been knocked out in 5 pro bouts.
A solid choice for Karis Artingstall's 3rd professional match.
Lindsey Buczynskyj, who debuted as a professional in June of 2021. She fought 2 times that year, fought 3 times last year in 2022. She's coming off of 2 consecutive wins over 2 unbeaten fighters. Can she keep that streak going?
She beat unbeaten Chelsea Arnell and unbeaten Rhea Rainey.
Will she beat unbeaten amateur standout
Karis Artingstall?
Karis, who debuted as a professional in June of last year. She only fought 2 times last year. She could stand to be a bit busier, and hopefully she will be this year. This is her first fight in 2023.
She's one of 2 very talented, unbeaten featherweights that will be in action this weekend. Lest we forget, Raven Chapman is going to see action as well.
Raven's going to be fighting former champion Linda Leka, and Karis is going to be fighting Lindsey Buczynskyj. Having gotten a look at Lindsey Buczynskyj in action, she's a solid fighter.
It's a solid choice.
It's a solid choice for an unbeaten up-and-comer. Good physical dimensions for the weight. She's coordinated, knows her way around the ring.
Good movement, good combinations.
So her defense is a bit leaky in the exchange. A bit leaky mid-range to inside in the pocket.
Mid-range to outside, she's all right, so long as she's got room to work and room to move, getting off straight shots.
Pumping out that jab to set up other punches, whereas Karis is a mean-spirited fighter. She spends the fight trying to get mid-range to inside to let heavy shots go within close quarters.
I think that's why they chose her. I think that's how they landed on Lindsey Buczynskyj. She's a capable fighter, and she can give Karis some resistance, some work, but in the pocket.
In the exchange, she's vulnerable. She can be tagged.
She can be caught.
Because Karis Artingstall sets a fast pace for her fights, at least based on what I've seen.
She gets off to a fast start.
The game plan might be to draw Lindsey Buczynskyj into exchanges where Karis Artingstall can get off short punches, short hooks, mid-range to inside. I know Karis doesn't have any recorded knockouts, not yet, but she might actually rack one up this weekend.
Lindsey Buczynskyj's a decent fighter, decent boxer, but she's not as quick,
not as explosive as Karis Artingstall. That's actually one of Karis's standout qualities.
And even though she doesn't have any recorded knockouts yet, there does seem to be power on her shots.
Now settling into the pro ranks, I think we might start seeing Karis get girls out of there in what is a very deep women's featherweight division, talent-rich.
Where Amanda Serrano currently reigns as that division's undisputed champion, Karis Artingstall, like many unbeaten up-and-comers at this weight, is a ways out from fighting for a full-fledged alphabet title.
For now, the first order of business is getting more rounds in the bank. Activity is a young fighter's best friend, and in the early stages of a fighter's career, that's what normally goes on. It's not unusual that a young fighter might fight 3 and 4 times within 1 calendar year at the start of their pro career. That's what I expect to see for Karis, who I expect will have a handle on the situation, a handle on Lindsey Buczynskyj this weekend on the undercard of Okolie versus Light. Lawrence Okolie, who described Eddie Hearn as being malicious, jealous, bitter, and vindictive. The WBO Cruiserweight champion Lawrence Okolie ripped into Eddie Hearn following the matchroom split as he predicts more boxers to follow suit.
Yeah, so long as Ben Shalom is willing to overpay you guys to fight guys like David Light.
He didn't hold back in his view of Eddie Hearn, who was involved in a heated 90-minute discussion with Talk Sport host Simon Jordan on Tuesday, commenting on why he chose to sign for boxer. Okolie said on Drive, basically, long story, you have a choice as a fighter to go where you are celebrated or to go to where you are tolerated. And I felt like I was being tolerated at my last place, and I could be celebrated here depending on how I get on in terms of wins and where we go from there. He continued, at the end of the day, I don't want to get into Eddie Hearn. He's a former promoter. It's like talking about an ex-partner over and over again. It is what it is.
You know what I notice? These guys like Lawrence and Joshua Buczynskyj that ended up leaving Matchroom for boxers spend more time talking about Eddie Hearn and what led to the split than their own fights.
What Ben Shalom has planned for them. Lawrence continued, let him say and do what he wants. I'm very happy with how my life is going, and now I have to just focus on winning. Pressed on whether they are still in talks, Okolie remarked, me and him have chats because we have an ongoing situation behind the scenes that maybe I'm not allowed to talk too much on, but the way he acts personally is very different. He's very malicious, bitter, jealous as well.
Jealous of who?
Jealous of Ben? And for someone who has been brought up in such a great position and has done so much in terms of his own life, the way he acts on a personal level is very vindictive.
That's what most of the stories centered around these guys seem to focus on. They seem to focus more on Eddie Hearn than who these guys are actually fighting.
I don't see a lot in here about David Light or what Lawrence Okolie plans to do after that. Lawrence continued, it's quite shocking to be honest, but ultimately, I actually rate him as a promoter, but in terms of the other stuff, not so much. Okolie isn't the only fighter that has swapped Matchroom for boxer in recent times, with Joshua Buczynskyj, Liam Smith, Chris Billam-Smith, and Joseph Parker all making the move.
Don't forget Savannah Marshall, April Hunter, Natasha Jonas.
I fucking love Natasha Jonas.
I'm not gonna apologize for that.
Asked whether Hearn acts differently with other fighters who leave him, Okolie stated, all you have to do is look at the track record. When it was my departure, it was very easy to say he's this, he's that, and now we've had more fighters leave. At the time Liam Smith left, oh yeah, he's in his heyday. Don't worry about that one. Now his career has gone through the roof. You look at Chris Billam-Smith, a former stablemate of mine. Oh, we don't really care about the Chris Billam-Smith's headline fights at Bournemouth.
Well, you're with a competing promoter now. What do you expect?
No matter what, there are going to be some hard feelings when you leave a promoter that has been so invested in your career, gotten you to this point, and you skip out on him.
There are going to be hard feelings.
But what needs to be said is that what Lawrence Okolie is now getting for a fight, and Joshua Buczynskyj, perhaps several others, is more than Eddie Hearn was willing to pay. A dollar amount he was unwilling to match.
Because he don't feel it reflects their actual market value.
Ben Shalom is paying top dollar, paying generously to acquire talent and funnel it over to Skysports and Boxer, paying dollar amounts that perhaps don't reflect what these guys are worth in the open market. So right now...
Oh yeah, it's all cookie crunchy right now.
The list goes on. Now Joshua Buczynskyj's gone, all of a sudden he's scared. And whatever else. Us boxers, we all talk. We're all very much aware of what he's like and conversations that are happening, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that get in the ring, and we're really the ones that understand each other.
But you're not the ones that pay to do these shows. You're not the ones that pay to do these fights.
The investment that goes into a fighter, developing one, grooming one, and getting them to a title,
that comes from the promoter.
In Lawrence's situation, that came from Eddie Hearn. And towards the end of his contractual agreement, you can see that Ben Shalom started going in this kid's ear, whispering sweet nothings into it.
Let's call a spade a spade. Ben is willing to pay you more money than Eddie is.
Eddie Hearn didn't want to put up the kind of money, the same kind of money that Ben Shalom is putting up for you, so you went with Ben.
I don't even fault Lawrence for that.
I understand it, but I also understand how that might elicit some hard feelings from Eddie Hearn, who got you to that point.
I get it.
So of course he's like that with everyone. My one was probably a little easier to do, but with others, as we've seen this week, all of a sudden, now Joshua Buczynskyj is scared.
Lawrence can't really compare his situation to Joshua Buczynskyj's because...
The big fights and the big names in the men's light heavyweight division where Joshua Buczynskyj campaigns A good number of them are right there on Matchroom, whereas for Lawrence,
going to Skysports and Boxer may not necessarily affect Lawrence's ability to get big fights
and unification matches.
It's different for Joshua Buczynskyj.
It's not the same thing because they offered you a couple of big fights right there at Matchroom and DAZN. The Callum Smith fight, the Dimitri Bivol fight. You put distance between yourself and those fights.
And that's why somebody might look at Joshua Buczyńskij's move from Matchroom over to Boxer as him being scared, him moving away from big fights.
Lawrence going to Sky doesn't put distance between him and unification matches. Those fights can still happen, but Joshua Buczyńskij going to Boxer.
What big fights are you going to make over there?
It seems to me like the real reason Joshua Buczyńskij went over there is because Ben Shalom is willing to pay him big money for what are not big fights.
That's what I see.
Some onlookers might look at that and interpret it as Joshua Buczyńskij being scared of real competition. Now, Lawrence continued, when you asked him 2 months ago, Joshua Buczyńskij is ready for anything, so it is what it is. And Okolie then claimed that it wouldn't be a shock for him if more boxers follow him in leaving Hearn once their contracts come to an end. He said, all you have to do is look at how people act after you're no longer working with them. They'll show you their truth.
The same can be said about you know.
And it's not just with me. As I said, I'm not here to talk about other fighters, even that much about Eddie. That is the feeling amongst not just myself, but a lot of fighters.
Lawrence is going to fight David Light, his WBO mandatory challenger, this weekend. Not a big fight. Nobody's buzzing about it, but I can't fault Lawrence for that.
It's his mandatory challenger. He has to take care of that guy to stay WBO Cruiserweight Champion. It's beyond this weekend's fight where things are going to get interesting because we have to see...
You're not with Eddie anymore. You're not with Matchroom. It's up to Ben to promote you now. It's up to Ben to make you the star.
You're saying you went from an environment where you were tolerated to an environment where you are celebrated. But will the fans be celebrating you now that you're at Boxer? That's the question.
What kind of fights are you going to give the fans?
Beyond this weekend's David Light fight, you know there were 3 other champions at this weight right there with Lawrence Okolie.
Is Ben Shalom going to put you in the ring with one of those guys?
Sounds a lot like what you're saying, is that Boxer provides a more fertile environment for your career than Matchroom did. Well, let's put that to the test. Let's see what Ben Shalom puts together for you.
I'm not underestimating him, by the way, but that's how this move will be gauged.
Measured. If this was the right move for Lawrence Okolie, that's how you can prove it. It did work out for Natasha Jonas, after all. I don't think Natasha Jonas would be a unified Ring Magazine and lineal junior middleweight champion here today had she stayed with Matchroom.
I don't.
I think she felt like they were just using her as an opponent for other fighters that they had more of an investment in. That's likely how she felt. Maybe that's how Lawrence feels a little bit. But is it going to work out for Lawrence?
Only Ben Shalom can prove that.
He's not a big ticket seller, in spite of being an unbeaten champion. He's not a big draw. Can Ben Shalom turn him into one?
Or is the only reason you're over there because Ben Shalom is willing to overpay you?
Seems like that's the only reason Joshua Buczyńskij's over there. He's willing to overpay Joshua Buczyńskij for fights that are not big fights.
Third-party backing.
Which is a separate matter. The fact that the journos themselves are more interested in hearing about Eddie Hearn from Lawrence as opposed to the guy that he's fighting.
The press conference that Ben Shalom had last week with Joshua Buczyńskij.
They didn't seem to spend much time talking about who Joshua Buczyńskij is going to fight moving forward. It was more centered around Eddie Hearn and leaving the DAZN platform.
Pretty much. That seems to be the most news any of these guys are making.
Now, when it comes to DAZN is a platform. They have announced that existing subscribers on the monthly Saver or annual Super Saver deals can now register via the DAZN website for access to their new Sky TV channel, DAZN 1 HD Sky 429, for no extra cost. This move was made in order to cater to existing DAZN subscribers who wanted to view DAZN content by way of Sky. But you can expect that many more people to jump on board now that DAZN is in bed with Sky.
Making all that guff Joshua Buczyńskij was carrying on about last week, a lot of hogwash.
DAZN will get that much more spillover by way of Sky than they were getting before as a standalone app, a standalone platform. With Sky in the mix of it,
Rome wasn't built in a day. Wait and see.
It's going to boil down to who's putting on the bigger shows and who's putting on the bigger bigger fights? Who's shelling out the better content? Ben Shalom's aim, his focus more than anything, seems to be attempting to replicate what Matchroom already built by focusing on and targeting Matchroom fighters.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery.
I don't see Ben Shalom targeting Wasserman fighters or Frank Warren fighters. He seems to have a specific hankering for Matchroom alum, Matchroom fighters. And he's done a good job of funneling at least some of that talent over there to Skysports and Boxer. But the question then becomes, now that you've got those fighters and you've got that talent, what exactly are you going to do with it?
Because Lawrence Okolie wasn't a big draw back when Matchroom had him. Neither was Joshua Buczynskyj. In fact, most of Joshua Buczynskyj and Lawrence Okolie's fights were right there on Sky.
Back when Matchroom was still in bed with Sky.
And these guys weren't big draws.
Thus, it will be up to Ben Shalom and Boxer to change that, to turn these guys into big draws, big marquee attractions. And once again, I'm not going to underestimate him. We'll see if he can.
Let's see if he does.
Because if he doesn't, and what we're seeing 9 to 10 months from now, 12 months from now, are Boxer fighters asking for fights with Matchroom fighters that are on another platform.
Matchroom fighters, Queensberry Promotions fighters, if that's what we end up seeing.
If the end result of this exodus from Matchroom over to Boxer, if the end result is Boxer fighters looking for fights with Matchroom fighters.
Yeah, just the other day, I saw Carolyn Dubois calling for a fight with Rhiannon Dixon.
Carolyn Dubois never fought under the Matchroom banner, you understand. She's over there at Boxer, though.
She's been with Boxer since she debuted as a professional. What's she looking at Rhiannon Dixon for? She's over there at Matchroom.
Rhiannon, who was in action a little over a week ago, racked up another W and signed a multi-fight deal with Matchroom. She didn't migrate over to Sky. She stayed put.
If what the subsequent weeks and months from now result in, what follows is Boxer fighters talking about Matchroom fighters.
No, I don't think that's a good look for Ben. The best look for Ben, the best look for Boxer, and all the fighters that decided to go over there is whether or not Ben can put them in big fights and put on big shows.
Not name-dropping guys that ain't on your side of the street.
Guys and girls, that will be the ultimate and final testament as to whether going over to Boxer was the right decision.
Whether or not they made the right move.
That'll tell the story. And that's a story that only time can tell.
See how it plays out.
Because I gotta tell you, I'm noticing a difference already. Matchroom's unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's featherweight division, Sky Nicholson. She fought 5 times since having debuted as a professional. 5 times in 1 calendar year. Whereas Karis Artingstall and Lauren Price, they fought but twice.
Just 2 times apiece.
Since having debuted as professionals. So time will tell the story as to who the better promoter really is and which environment is the more fertile environment.
Which makes their jobs harder, but it's more content for us.